Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Content Crowd. The Content Crowd is a podcast where we like to explore what makes content resonate, from creative habits to point of view shifts to behind the scene breakdowns and much more, so that listeners and also me can stop mimicking and start making something that actually matters. I want to start off this episode by mentioning that this show is sponsored by Scrappy ABM. Scrappy ABM helps you build repeatable account-based plays and teaches you and your team how to own them so that you guys can bring ABM in-house when you're ready. So go to scrappyabm.com to learn more. So today's episode is another solo episode. This year is very busy, and I've had a few guests who have rescheduled to later in the month. So next week we will have more guests, and we have a few really exciting people that I'm really stoked to talk to. So for the time being, I'm just going to talk about something that I've been thinking about a lot. With this podcast, the whole purpose of it is to help people learn how to create content, how to create better content, and how to start creating content. But I think one of the biggest sticking points for a lot of people is, well, how do I get started? How do I actually create? I can go and watch YouTube videos and read stuff and throw a prompt into ChatGPT or Grok or whatever and, create content, so to speak. But how do I actually go about creating it? So I want to dedicate this episode to talking about how I have personally, got into creating content and how I started and sort of what keeps me going. So, how often do you catch yourself scrolling, watching someone else live your dream? They're posting videos, they're building their brand, they're getting comments, they're getting likes, they're getting shares, and you feel like you're just in this constant loop of consuming and doubting and delaying what you really want to do. And if you're like most people, you're probably telling yourself, I'm not ready yet. You think you need a better camera, a clear niche, a strategy deck in Notion. But the truth is, content creators aren't born when they finally go viral. They're born the moment they start just thinking like a content creator. And thinking like a content creator is not about having followers. It's about how you see the world, how you envision yourself. You walk down the street, you think, this could be a story. I could set my camera up, and this could be a great angle, of me walking by. And I could imagine the story that I would be telling over it. You have a conversation, and you think, this could help someone else. You mess up, and instead of hiding it, you realize, this might actually be the most relatable I've ever been. And so that mindset is how you start turning your life into fuel for content, basically. And I know the old adage is that everything is content. And yes, you don't have to spend your entire life trying to create content, but if you can just shift your attention from what you lack to what you can create, it moves you from passively watching into actively creating. So that shift from consumer to creator is everything. And it's all in your mind. It's what flips your brain from I can't to, what if I tried? What if I just filmed this? It makes you stop feeling invisible. And so this episode is not just motivation. It's a practical map. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through how to sort of rewire your brain to think like a creator even before you have an audience. We'll cover 5 mindset shifts that changed everything for me, and the exact content practice that I use to start showing up consistently, and why all of it starts before you ever hit post. It all starts in your mind, and it all starts with how you think about what you're doing and how you're going to create. So, I get it. I understand. You've probably said some version of I don't know where to start. But that ends today, hopefully. I hope it does. Not by waiting, but by deciding. You already have the raw material that you need. You have your story, you have your curiosity, your perspective. So all you need now is to flip the switch and begin acting like the version you've always imagined, acting like that content creator, thinking about where I can set up my camera and film myself. So if you ever felt like you were made to create something, but you've just kind of kept waiting for the clarity or permission or perfection, this episode is for you. This is me telling you that you have the permission to start. So let's begin. This is the shift that changes everything. I've always wanted to be a content creator of some kind, but I don't think I always thought like one exactly. For a long time, I've spent just a ton of time consuming videos and podcasts and posts and watching other people rise and grow and do the things that I've always wanted to do. And I would just always like save posts or take screenshots and be like, I should try that. Like that's an idea I'm going to do. I'm just constantly like farming ideas. But instead of like posting them, they would just kind of rot in, again, my screenshots folder or my notes app or in my, some playlist on YouTube. And I told myself that was like the strategy. That was like the, putting things together while I plan things out, that I'd post when I felt more confident or I had like the right setup or when I figured out my niche or like, whatever. But none of that clarity came while I was just kind of sitting around and saving in screenshots. What did show up was a lot of frustration that I was watching people build what I knew I could build and doing the things that I wanted to do, but I just kept scrolling past videos that felt like someone else took the words like right out of my mouth. And, underneath all that was just like the fear to start and like fear that I would fail or not be good enough or not be able to keep going or people would judge me or think I'm weird or, whatever. And, it just felt like I didn't have what it took to actually become like a content creator. And so this is what we all do. We like in that fear, we over prepare and we sign up for courses and we watch tutorials and we pay for things and we get all these newsletters and we spend days, writing all these things and putting ideas and, doing everything except what actually matters, which was just like posting and actually doing it. And so, one day I found myself like watching a creator I admired, like very like minimal edits, like just them talking to their camera, maybe a few cuts here or there, no real like B-roll, maybe some pictures popped up, and it was like that's super easy. Like, I could create that, so why am I not? I don't need to have this like all this expensive B-roll or make this B-roll. I just need to be able to just have something that I feel really strongly about and passionate about and sit down and talk in front of a camera, even if it's not like super flashy, even if it's not like this mind-blowing new thing. Like, people are out there looking for a point of view and they're looking for a perspective, and we all have that. We just need to talk about it and put it out there. There's this one guy that I really enjoy watching his videos, and it's just him in front of like a whiteboard and he's just drawing on a whiteboard, and like the sound isn't that great, the video isn't that great. The sound is good enough, like it's echoey, but like it's good enough. It's not terrible. And he's just drawing on a whiteboard, and that's it. There's no edits. He's just kind of like talking through. It's like watching like a school lesson. It should be really encouraging to all of us. Like, it becomes super easy. You can see that. Grab your phone and prop it up on some books and like hit record and, talk about something that you've been thinking about for weeks. It doesn't have to be perfect. Lighting doesn't have to be great, but like you can talk through it and you can post it. And you'll try that. And, that's what I did, and didn't get a lot of views in the beginning, but that's okay. Like, that first post is going to feel weird. You're going to feel embarrassed maybe, or you're going to feel like, why am I even doing this? But like, here's the thing, the very first thing is not going to go off necessarily. Actually, I've got a pretty interesting thing that I wrote here. Top 1% of podcasts is 21 episodes. So if you can post 21 episodes of a podcast, you are in the top 1% of creators. And I'm sure that the number is pretty similar for other things, however many YouTube videos you do, however many, Facebook lives you do, or like LinkedIn live. Like, I'm sure there's like a percentage of that of like, if you can just post for 21 days in a row or post 21 episodes of your podcast, you're in the top 1% of creators. Like, that's pretty crazy. So even you post the first thing and it doesn't just go off and it doesn't just define your career, that's okay, because you're going to keep doing it. You're going to do it again and do it again. You're going to stop obsessing over views and start focusing on just getting the reps in, on the momentum and the feeling of showing up for yourself and getting 1% better each time or every day. And, and by, 4 or 5 videos or 4 or 5 really good posts, like, you'll start getting, comments and likes and shares, and you'll get tiny signals that there's somebody out there listening and that something you said really resonated. And also, more importantly, it just shows that you are building trust in yourself. You are, creating something, and everything you create is just a deposit into the identity of becoming a content creator. And it doesn't mean you have 1,000 views or thousands of views or all these comments and shares or whatever, but it's because that you show up even when it was completely quiet, and you were defining yourself and rewiring your brain as a content creator. That's the part that no one sees. The early days when you're kind of like posting into the void, that's like your playground. That's when you can just, try things out and see what clicks. There's not going to be any there clapping for you, and like metrics are non-existent, but it's like, again, the follow through, and just really like the big thing is just making a promise to yourself and then keeping it. That is the main goal, is just to make a promise to yourself and keep doing it. So what I learned from the posting, is that you don't become a content creator when you blow up. You just become one when you show up. Okay, you become one when you make something when no one's asking, when you stop needing permission, you start doing, and you stop asking, am I ready? And you just start asking, am I willing? And then you answer yourself with, yes, I am willing. And so that's why this episode is not called like how to go viral. It's not talking about virality or metrics or anything. It's just about thinking like the person who would post anyway. Even when it's messy, or even when you stutter, even when the lighting's weird, even when the sound is a little off, even when you're trying out like a new microphone or something like that, and the sound is a little weird, and you kind of got to mess with it. Like, you're just posting anyway. Especially when all those things are going wrong, you're still doing it. That's how you become closer to becoming a full-time content creator. That version of you, like, it's a lot closer than you think it is. It just starts with actually doing and posting. So let's talk about the core of this whole episode. The power of thinking like a content creator, or just a creator in general, before you are one. And I know it sounds kind of strange, but I mean, I've heard this time and time again, and it makes sense. Like, it's not just motivational fluff. Like, it's psychology. It's behavioral science. If you think like a person who goes to the gym and works out and eats healthy, you will just feel like that, and you will start making those decisions based on that. You will choose healthier foods. You will choose, going to the gym after work, even when you're tired, or waking up early. It's a concept called identity-based habits, and it says the actions we repeat are not just things we do. They're statements about who we believe we are. And so when you say, I'm not a content creator, well, guess what? Your brain tells you that. Or when you think, I don't create, or I'm not a creator, or I'm not a writer, or I'm not a podcaster, or whatever. So your brain will protect that identity by avoiding actions that contradict that. That's why you don't post. That's why you second guess every idea. And that's why you're just like, saving all this stuff into a folder that you'll never use, and you'll never actually create anything and hit publish. But flip that around. The moment you say, I'm the kind of person who shares ideas online. I'm the kind of person who, writes a post every single day. I'm the kind of person who posts a picture of myself every single day and talks about something that I believe in. Your actions start to line up with that, and you start to find ways to make those things work. You start finding like good B-roll ideas. You start thinking about the world in weird and wild ways, so that you can set up a camera and film yourself. You start just realizing how easy it actually is. Your ideas start to line up with that. You begin looking for stories in your everyday life. You capture thoughts when they hit, and you start creating your creativity like something worth building and talking about and recording and sharing and not hiding. So thinking like a creator rewires your default settings. It changes how you walk through the world. Most people go through life looking for content to consume when they're bored. They're looking for something to scroll through or numb their brain. But like, creators go through life like mining for content to share. Thinking of a different way to ask a question, thinking of a different answer to that question, thinking about what they learned from an awkward conversation, or how did this random thought connect to something bigger, or who can I talk to today to get some ideas out there. Who do I wish someone had, what do I wish that someone would have told me 5 years ago? It's not about being performative, and it's not about like, seeking attention. It's about paying attention. This mindset shift also kills perfectionism, because instead of needing every post to be a masterpiece, you start just kind of seeing it as a practice rep. Just like with all these podcast episodes, they started going live. I've recorded some of them, but most of them are live, and they've all been practice reps. I look back and think like, the way I talked, or the way that I asked a question, like I was really bad at it, and I'm still bad at it, but I'm getting better. I think my last interview was really good at the way I asked questions. I felt like I was very clear on what I was trying to ask them. But some of the episodes I go back and listen to, and I'm just kind of just like stringing together a bunch of sentences and words and hoping that it makes sense as a question. So It's all about practice reps. People are, seeing it or hearing it, but you know what? In 10 more episodes, like, I'm going to be so much better, and the goal is just to keep getting a little bit better each time. So when you start to think like a creator, you start designing your life differently. You say yes to things that scare you, like starting a podcast or starting a live show. But you start doing it because it'll make a good story. You reflect more, you process your life in public, you connect dots you never saw before. And, people can tell when your content comes from that place. It feels real and it feels alive. It's less like a performance and more like a window. And that, you don't always have to do that. You don't always have to create content that's a window into your life. But it is very important that a lot of that creation has that authenticity. And it's something that you actually feel passionate about or wonder about or curious about. There's nothing wrong with creating content for the sake of, promoting your business or ideally making money or whatever. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think it's important that as you're creating, you are considering how it actually connects to you, how it connects to knowledge and to story and that point of view that I mentioned. You have to have some kind of point of view. And so when you are creating content for your business or for, your work, let's say you work for a place and you're creating content, always look for a way to connect the dots to like a story that you have personally talked about. It's not always for views. It's not always for money, but even when you are doing it that way, always look for that point of view that you can share with somebody. It's really important because that's how you sort of build identity, you build connection with others, and you build that relationship between you and the person you're trying to reach. And so as you start to think like a content creator, you begin to realize that everything can be content, and not in like a fake forced way, but in a deeply human way. Again, like a walk with a friend turns into a voiceover, or, some failure or misunderstanding at work turns into like a reflection post or video or blog or whatever. And you're using that as a moment to help somebody else overcome that. That's like the big thing is, again, that point of view, and you are trying to, that point of view is you trying to connect with somebody else. And if it's a failure at work or maybe it's a good thing at work, either way, you're trying to connect with somebody and help them understand something that they didn't understand before that only you have the ability to communicate with. And here's something else kind of wild, but like the moment you start thinking like a creator, you start noticing how often the world conspires to give you content. You have more thoughts, you have more ideas, more moments that feel worth sharing. Not because anything else changed, but just because you did and the way you started seeing the world changed. You go from waiting to be inspired or waiting to be discovered to just deciding to document your own discovery process. I mean, even just from starting a podcast, it's just opened up so many other doors and ideas. And like I'm doing like a live show with a friend of mine on Wednesday nights, and we talk about personal finance. That's not even something that I thought that I would ever talk about in my entire life, but just because he was on my show and he's kind of seen what's happened with it, he was interested in starting it and wanted me to help him do that. So in a way, like I'm helping him launch this show and I'm helping him do it, but that's just more content for me too. And it's just ways that I can relate to somebody in different ways, and I can relate to his guests and people in his network in a different way. So my network has doubled now by working with him, and it'll continue to do that. We will continue to grow each other, and we'll find other people that want to start shows and podcasts, and we'll help them, and we'll just continue to grow, and we'll all become this group of content creators who just started by just creating and sharing our point of view ourselves. But yeah, that's why this section is so important, and why I've harped on it so much, is because most people wait to feel like a content creator before they act like one. But it's the other way around. You have to act like one first, think like it, and start building like one, and that's when things shifts. So how do you actually do it? Okay, I'm going to break down 5 mindset shifts that help me stop thinking like a consumer and start thinking like an actual creative entrepreneur, a content strategist, a content creator, whatever word you want to use. This is what I did to start doing that. But before we get into that, I want to give you like a mini challenge. And I should have mentioned this at the beginning, but I'm going to mention it now. Next time you feel inspired by a video or post, instead of saving it, create your own version of it. Okay? Just throwing it out there. Not later, but now. Just when you save it, write it down and decide you're gonna make your own version. And let that mindset shift happen right there with that video. Okay. But enough with all the motivation. Let's get tactical. So here are the 5 mindset shifts that completely changed how I think about content and helped me go from someone who watched others post to someone who shows up consistently. Each of these is simple, but it's not easy. It is easy, but if you just have to take them seriously and just change up things, each week, and it'll completely change your entire life. So mindset shift number 1 is quantity over clarity. Most people wait for clarity. They don't know what their niche is and they're trying to narrow down. They're not sure what to talk about yet and they'll just keep thinking of ideas. But clarity doesn't come before you start. It comes from actually starting. Like driving through fog. Like you don't wait for it to lift before moving. You turn on your low beams and you just kind of take it slow, right? Same with content. You're just going to start doing. Your first post will feel random. And that's fine. And your friends will be like, what are they doing? But that's okay. It's not about making perfect content. It's about making enough content to find your voice and your rhythm and your people. And you'll probably have to make 100 posts or 100 videos or 100 podcast episodes. And it's just like a trek up, cringe mountain for the most part. And you'll probably like a few of those and probably won't. But eventually you will find your voice. You'll start getting to a rhythm. You'll find what works, and you'll be able to replicate that and actually start attracting an audience that likes that. And so each video or each post, whatever, even the low performing ones, is a data point about what you enjoy, what connects, and what doesn't. So clarity doesn't come from thinking; it comes from doing. Okay, mindset shift number 2: inspiration is earned, not found. We love to chase inspiration. We love to go look for videos and tutorials or whatever. But here's the truth. Like creators who sit around and wait to feel inspired will lose to the ones who build systems. Inspiration, it's kind of like motivation. Like it's not it comes and goes, but you have to have the discipline to do it. It's not something you chase in desperation. It's something you have to just build into your life. The best creators don't wait for inspiration or motivation. They just build a habit of showing up even when it feels dry. So many episodes that I've created just don't feel like I'm just not super inspired and ready to do it. But hey, you know what? I scheduled this time. I promised I would show up every day, or I promised I would show up every Thursday at this time, and I would talk about this, and that's what I'm going to do. And it's not about inspiration or motivation, and some days you don't want to do it. It's just you've built a habit, you've built a system. So keep an idea bank in your notes app or in Google Docs or whatever. Set a schedule to review it, pick out 3 of the top ones, or the 3 best ones, whatever you feel best about, and just start doing it. Make a video about it, make posts about it, make videos and posts about it, make a blog about it. Whatever you do, just take those ideas and carve out time to create and put it on your calendar to make sure that it happens. So if you want to feel inspired more often, just create more often. So that action invites inspiration, and it's the other way around. You're not going to be inspired and create this great masterpiece. You're going to schedule it into your calendar and create it. Mindset shift number 3, your story is a strategy. And I kind of harped on this earlier, talking about that point of view. You have to have a point of view to share with somebody to make that connection. We think about strategy, about algorithms and templates, but the best strategy is just telling the truth about yourself and making it work, telling your story. Nobody else has your story. Nobody else has your timeline, your voice, your way of thinking, your way of making sense of the world. And that's your advantage. That's your unfair advantage. You have that point of view that you can share with somebody. And when you start from sharing from that place, the messy middle, the behind the scenes, the doubts and the tiny wins and the failures, like people don't just see your content, they see you and they trust in you and the content. They see themselves in it. They see where they are or where they were, and you are doing what they want to do. So they're going to follow you. And that's how a community starts. You don't have to be an expert. You don't have to, have this big awesome portal or whatever set up. You just have to be honest. If you're one step ahead of where somebody wants to be, then that's it. Like you have something valuable to offer. So stop waiting, to arrive and just start sharing where you're at, right in the middle. I mean, I made a whole episode about the messy middle a few weeks ago. And I think it's a great point to really like nail down that you got to start creating in the messy middle. Mindset shift number 4 is consistency builds confidence, not the other way around. Everyone wants confidence, but confidence doesn't show up. You do. Okay. Discipline shows up. If you've ever felt like I'll post when I feel more confident, or maybe I should like try to get more followers somehow, like it's kind of like I want to get in better shape before I go to the gym. People think about that, and that's a real thing that people think about. I'll lose more weight and then I'll go to the gym. I'll get more followers somehow and then I'll start posting seriously. But the only way to feel confident is to do it before you're ready. Confidence is the reward you get for doing scary things repeatedly. It's like lifting weights. The first reps feel weird and awkward, but over time your muscles grow. Not from thinking about lifting, but actually doing it. Okay? Posting is the same. At first it feels uncomfortable, but with every post, your tolerance grows. You start thinking, I've done this before. I can do it again. I survived last time. I'll do it a little bit better this time. And that's how you build confidence. You put in the reps and the confidence comes. And it only comes from consistency. Here's a bonus thought. Consistency compounds. You not only feel better about your work, but others begin to notice. You get feedback, you grow faster, you stop obsessing over every metric, and your focus shifts from outcome to output. Just a little food for thought there. Mindset shift number 5, done is better than perfect. I live by this one. Perfectionism is one of the most seductive lies in content creation. And it doesn't mean that you are super nitpicky about everything. It means that you're going to spend so much time I'm terrible with this, but you spend so much time trying to learn and do everything correctly, and you want to become an expert on everything. And then you become an expert on everything except you haven't actually done the thing. And this can be with anything in life, not just content creation, but maybe your work. Like you want to come and become a marketer, and you become an expert on marketing, but you've never actually grown a lead list. You've never actually promoted anything. You've never actually helped anybody do marketing. You've just an expert on it, but you've never actually done it. And that's sort of like where the perfectionism and like content creation comes from. It's just like, it's just like fear, but in like a fancy jacket, I guess. Like I've lost count of how many creators that I've, worked with, or people that I've worked with who's like, I've been working on this idea for weeks, and most of those ideas never actually see the light of day. Meanwhile, somebody else can post like a raw and perfect take, and it's just, it's fun. They have a misspelling in their LinkedIn post, whatever, it works. It's not because it's polished, but because it was just, they're creating and they're building consistency. And when you start like valuing expression and talking in your point of view over perfection, everything changes. You post more, you learn faster, and you start tying your self-worth to like how well something performs, or how well it looks, or how much knowledge you have. Yeah, you just make it, you post it, you learn from it, you move on, and you do a little bit better. There's no reason to write something and tweak it endlessly and get overwhelmed and keep going and then just never do it. Like, you just have to do it. Your best work comes after the work you thought was average, but you're only going to get there if you keep publishing. So post it, let it be average, let it not be as good as you thought it was, get a little bit better, and build momentum. That's sort of the creator's advantage, is momentum over mastery. So these 5 shifts: quantity over clarity, systems over motivation, story over strategy, consistency over confidence, and action over perfection, are the mindset toolkit that you need to become a content creator. Okay, you don't have to master all 5 at once. Pick one, practice it daily, get a week in of practicing these things, and then start stacking it with the others. And remember that like content creation isn't about growth metrics. It's about growth identity and showing up for yourself so that you can show up for someone else, and show up for yourself in a way that builds belief and trust, and those people will come. The community will come. Okay, it's not just about publishing videos. You're proving to yourself that I will do this. I've made a promise to myself and I will do it. And over time, the proof stacks up and it becomes your brand. But more importantly, it becomes your belief, and it becomes the trust in those who believe in you, including yourself. So you don't have to wait until you feel like a creator, or you don't have to wait until you finally get a job that allows you to create. Just start acting like one. Start creating. Start thinking like a content creator. Use those 5 mindset shifts. They will help you build the creator mindset, and you just have to do it. Now you've got the mindset shifts. So let's make it real. This is your 30-day content practice plan. This is the exact structure that I wish I had when I started. creating content. And if you follow it, you won't just post content, but you'll actually build momentum, confidence, and a sense of creative identity. So let's start. So I'm going to go through this really quickly, but I will include a doc for you guys to download as well. Phase 1, week 1, let's do an idea dump and daily spark. Your only goal this week is to start thinking like a creator. This means you don't need to publish everything. You're just building awareness. Your daily task is just to open your notes app or Google Doc, write down 3 things, write down something you're curious about, something you've learned recently, and something you've struggled with. It can take 5 minutes, or you can just do it as you go throughout the day. But don't judge what comes out. Don't try to be too original, and just document. At the end of each day, ask yourself what happened today that would make a good post. Out of those 3 things, what would make the best post? It might be a conversation, a frustration, a quote you heard, a small win, a random thought. What matters is that you capture it. These moments are going to be your raw material. By the end of this week, you'll have over 20 content ideas, all drawn out from your actual life, and that's pretty awesome. So phase 2, everyone put it in action. Week 2, 5 posts in 7 days. This is where we shift ideas to action. You'll create and publish 5 short form videos this week, or 5 posts, or 5 podcast clips, whatever you're kind of working in. But that's what you're going to do. You're going to take those ideas from last week and you're going to create 5 pieces of content this week. Format should be pretty easy. I'll help you guys out. Have a hook that grabs attention in the first 3 seconds, a bold statement, a question, or relatable moment. You'll put in your story, so share your experience or insight. Keep it casual as if you're talking to a friend. Works really well. And then shift. End with a takeaway or a tip, or even just an honest reflection about what you did and how you overcame that and what somebody should do. For example, I almost quit content creation last week. I posted 3 videos and they flopped, but then I realized I was judging progress by likes instead of my own growth. If you're only posting and not getting traction, keep going. It's not failing. It's just part of the process. That's a very quick and easy idea. I would put a little bit more in that, but that's kind of like a recap of this whole episode. So remember, the goal of this week is just to start posting. It's not perfection. It's movement. Post even if your lighting sucks. Post even if your voice shakes or you mess up words. Post even if you feel weird. Just do it. Okay. You're not going to go viral. You're just trying to go visible. Phase 3, week 3, you're going to choose your core topic. By now, patterns will start to emerge. Maybe 3 of your videos hit a nerve, and maybe you got a DM of somebody who related, or maybe you just got noticed, by what kind of content. Maybe you just noticed what kind of content that you enjoyed making the most. So that's kind of like your clue. That's what you should follow. You don't need a hyper specific niche. What you need is just a direction, like a little thread to pull on, and you just start going that way. So ask yourself these questions. What do I never get tired of talking about? What's something I wish more people knew? What kind of problems do I naturally like solving? Pick one topic and explore more deeply for the next 2 weeks. So don't worry if it's too broad or not niche down enough. You will refine over time. The key is to choose and commit. Okay. Phase 4, week 4, the system. This is where you'll start building your content creation system. Okay, remember we mentioned it's not about motivation or inspiration. It's about having a rhythm. It's discipline. So here's your content challenge for this week, for week 4. Pick a 90-minute window, batch record 3 videos, edit them, or don't edit them all, just talk, and then schedule them to go out on 3 different days. The reason we're talking about batching is because it just breaks down the loop of starting from scratch every day. You reduce mental fatigue and you kind of make space. I'm going to film on this day. I'm going to edit on this day. I'm going to write on this day. I'm going to film this day. And you just kind of keep it all going. So you don't feel so bogged down by writing everything in one day and then filming and editing. So it really just helps you, again, reduce that mental fatigue and give you space to grow and let creativity flow. Bonus is you could spend one day this week reviewing your week 2 and week 3 content. Which posts got engagement and which ones felt easy to make, which ones felt hard to make, and maybe just double down on those. Use those insights to refine how you go forward. Usually, the way algorithms work now, it takes a few weeks for things to really pick up traction. You'll start noticing what really works. And then so by week 5, you're going to take all that stuff that was working and now put it into your system and start making those 3 videos or those 3 to 5 posts or, those podcast episodes, whatever it is, start making that this week. So if you go through this and finish this, first of all, huge respect. Most people will never make it 30 days as a content creator, unfortunately. But more importantly, now you've got something to build on. You just spent a month creating content, in a very low stakes, easy to follow system. And that's pretty awesome. So what you need to do is to, one, keep your idea dump habit alive. Treat your notes app like gold, or do like I do. I kind of do a mix of both, where I have an actual journal, but what I've done is I put an index, so it's kind of like in the beginning there are just kind of like ideas and thoughts that I've written down, and then in the middle are where these thoughts are actually sort of like going in and ideas or actually being pumped out. So I kind of like this system, but I use my notes app as well because you know what? I don't always have my notebook and my pen on me, but I always am thinking of ideas. But anyway, do have somewhere that you put notes down, somewhere of ideas, and then start creating one anchor piece of content per week, something that matters to you, and then find a way to break that into other little pieces as you get more comfortable. You make a long form video, break it into smaller videos, break it into posts, break it into a blog, but you know, set that content sprint either, you know, 1 or 2 days a week, however it fits best in your calendar, and just work on bashing the content and putting it out there, and then dividing it out, optimizing it, and turning it into smaller bits of content. That's how you create consistency, and that's how you become a full-time content creator. And most importantly, watch your mindset. You know, you're not here to impress. You're here to express yourself. You're here to give that point of view. You're here to help somebody else. And you're here to just have fun, really. You know, if you start to lose motivation, revisit your why. You know, is it for business? Is it for money? You know, that's okay. You know, that's totally understandable. But, you know, but if it starts feeling like it's draining and it's not worth it, then maybe you should, you know, think about, you know, what are you doing it for? Who are you doing it for? You know, did you find yourself finding a lot of fun in expressing yourself and doing these kind of things? And then when it all became all about money, it kind of, you know, went downhill. You know, there's a lot of ways to think about it. But, you know, if you start to lose motivation, you start feeling stuck, just go back to your why and revisit it. And remind yourself why you wanted to become a content creator in the first place. If you can do this, if you can stick this over the next 30 days, you know what? You'll stop overthinking. You'll start trusting your instincts as a content creator. You'll become a content creator. You know, you'll begin to recognize your own voice and your point of view, and you'll stop saying someday, and you'll actually start doing it. And you can join the rest of us in content creation. So it's not about going viral. It's just about building a foundation for a content practice that grows with you. So if you've been waiting for somebody to tell you how to start, this is it. Okay. No more watching, no more scrolling, no more listening. I want you to do this. I want you to start creating. And there's one thing that I hope you take away from this episode. It's this. You don't need permission to become a content creator. You just need a decision. It doesn't matter how many followers you have. It doesn't matter if your lighting sucks, if you're still figuring out whatever. All that matters is that you show up as you are with what you have today. Because the moment you start thinking like a content creator, not today, you know, because the moment you start thinking like a content creator, not someday, like you're actually thinking I am a content creator and thinking like one, everything starts to shift. You start to notice ideas. You know, you act faster. You trust yourself deeper. You feel more comfortable speaking about things, and you believe in the things you're saying and know that they are going to help somebody who needs to hear it. And you, most importantly, you stop doubting and you start creating. Every creator you admire started, you know, somewhere a little rough, somewhere awkward, somewhere imperfect. But they started, and that's what made all the difference. So if you're still on the fence, still waiting for the right moment, this is it. You've got everything you need to begin. Start with your thoughts. Start with your story. You know, start sharing. Find that point of view. And let that act of creating be the thing that transforms you. And remember, it's not about going viral. It's about sharing something real. Sharing something that somebody needs to hear. Somebody who is 5 steps behind you. What do they need to hear from you that is going to change their life? And how is it going to change your life? By speaking that and sharing that story. Once you start thinking like a content creator, you'll wake up one day and realize that you already are one. Now, this episode resonated with you. Please share it with somebody who needs to hear it. I would love to hear your thoughts. Also, find me on LinkedIn or other places. I look forward to talking at you guys next week, and I hope you have a great rest of your week. Don't forget to grab the content creation sprint that I put together, and I look forward to seeing you all in 30 days and seeing what you create. Have a great day.